The cursed existence of a red dragon is not what legends promised us. My scales, once gleaming like fresh blood in sunlight, now hang loose and pale on my withering frame. Each night, when I close my eyes, I am forced to live the final moments of my victims, not as the mighty Vraxion who brought them death, but as the farmer watching his children hide, the knight whose armor melts into her flesh, the child who doesn't understand why the sky rains fire. After 3,000 years of glory, my punishment is to know their names, their hopes, their final prayers. What happens when a creature born to destroy is forced to understand the value of what it has broken? The cavern walls around me weep with magma, my once glorious lair now my prison. My scales, once gleaming like fresh blood in sunlight, now hang loose and pale on my withering frame. I shift my weight, sending agony through wings that could once blacken the sky. The movement disturbs centuries of treasure beneath me, gold coins and jeweled chalices clinking softly in the darkness. How meaningless they seem now, these trinkets I once killed to possess. The archmage who cursed me had violet eyes. I remember that clearly. Her name escapes me, one of so many names I never bothered to learn before I consumed their owners. But those eyes remained defiant even as my flames melted the flesh from her bones. With her final breath, she spoke 7 words in a language older than dragons. 7 words that rewrote the nature of my being. Feel every death you caused until you understand. I did not comprehend her meaning at first. Dragons do not concern themselves with the suffering of lesser beings, just as humans do not mourn the insects they crush underfoot. I returned to my lair triumphant. Another kingdom conquered, another wizard added to my tally of the powerful brought low. That night, I dreamed I was a farmer, small hands rough with calluses, a home smelling of fresh bread and wood smoke. Children with gap-toothed smiles. Then fire raining from above, pain beyond imagining, as my skin blackened and peeled away. My final thoughts not of myself but of my children hiding in the root cellar, praying the dragon would not find them. I woke roaring, wings thrashing against stone, tail smashing priceless artifacts to dust. But the pain did not cease with waking. It settled into my bones, a constant companion, and the next night brought another dream. A night this time, her armor melting into her flesh as she stood her ground. Night after night, life after life. Sometimes dozens in a single sleep, sometimes just one, long and agonizing and intimate. I began to know their names, their hopes, their final regrets. Mira, who wanted to see the ocean once before she died. Tom, who never told his brother he forgave him. Elrin, who left unfinished verses on a table that burned to ash. I stopped sleeping. Dragons can remain awake for decades if necessary. I carved new chambers in my mountain, expanding my lair to distract myself from the whispers growing in my mind. But the curse found new paths. In the shine of gold coins, I would see reflections of burning villages. In the ripple of magma pools, the wavering forms of children running from my shadow. Even in silence, I began to hear them. Thousands of voices, each telling me their story, each making me feel their end. 100 years passed, then 200. The kingdoms that once feared my name forgot I existed. Vegetation reclaimed the scorched lands I had created. New generations built homes from the ashes of my victims, never knowing the ground beneath them was fertilized with their ancestors. I tried to burn the curse away. I unleashed infernos within my lair that would have reduced cities to cinders. I slashed at my own hide with claws that had disemboweled armies, hoping physical pain might drown out the symphony of suffering in my skull. Nothing worked. The Archmage had crafted her vengeance too well. 500 years into my torment. I considered ending my existence. Dragons can live forever if disease and violence spare them. but we can die by choice if our will to continue falters. We call it the fading, a deliberate shutting down of heart and mind. But pride stopped me. Vraxion, the Crimson Devourer, would not be defeated, not even by this insidious magic that turned my own mind against me. Instead, I flew from my mountain for the first time in centuries. Wings weak and atrophied, I still possessed enough strength to seek the counsel of Cavarex, eldest of the bronze dragons, keeper of lore forgotten even by the gods. The journey nearly destroyed me. Each wing beat brought fresh agony as the curse interpreted my flight as an attempt to resume my reign of terror. By the time I reached Cavarex's island sanctuary, I was nearly insensate with pain, my scales falling away to reveal raw flesh beneath. "You have changed, Fire Brother," Cavarex said, his ancient voice rumbling like distant thunder as he circled me cautiously. His bronze scales gleamed with health and vitality, making my degradation all the more apparent. Of the endless parade of deaths I was forced to experience, of the voices that would not be silent. He listened without interruption, his expression unreadable in the way of all metallic dragons. When I finished, he was quiet for so long I wondered if he had entered the meditative trance our kind sometimes uses to commune with the past. Finally, he spoke. "This curse cannot be broken by any power I know. It is soul magic, tied to the fundamental nature of justice. The universe itself holds you accountable. Then I am to suffer eternally?" I demanded, smoke billowing from my nostrils in fury. "For acting according to my nature." Cavarex regarded me with ancient eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations. "Nature is not destiny, Vraxion. Even dragons can choose their path. What would you have me do? Apologize to ashes? Make restitution to bones? I would have you understand," he said simply, echoing the Archmage's final words. "Not merely feel, but comprehend. There is a difference." I left his island no wiser than when I had arrived. Understanding was beyond me. All I knew was suffering and rage and the growing weight of 1,000 deaths pressing against my consciousness. On the return journey, I nearly fell from the sky when a particularly vivid memory seized me, that of a young wizard apprentice who had tried to shield a group of children with her body. Her fear had tasted particularly sweet as she realized her minor protection spells were useless against my ancient fire. When I finally returned to my lair, I sealed myself inside, collapsed the entrance tunnels with my tail, buried myself beneath my hoard, like a serpent coiling in on itself. If I could not escape the curse, I would at least ensure I caused no more pain to add to my burden. Centuries passed in darkness and fire. The voices grew no quieter, but I developed a kind of tolerance. I began to categorize them, to separate them into groups based on their final moments. Warriors who died cursing my name, children who died not understanding what was happening, elders who died with resignation, lovers who died reaching for each other through the flames. I began to know them not just as victims, but as lives interrupted. I learned the weight of their relationships, the complexity of their dreams. In my isolation, they became more real to me than any dragon or kingdom or god. One voice in particular returned often, that of a bard who had stood in the town square of a mountain village as I descended. Instead of running, she had played her lute and sung a song of mourning, not for herself, but for me. "Poor creature of flame and hate," she had sung, "how empty your victories, how hollow your hoard." I had silenced her with contemptuous fire, but her song continued to echo. "Poor creature of flame and hate." The words followed me through centuries of torment. Was I truly poor, with all my riches? Was emptiness the only prize my conquests had earned me? 1,000 years into my curse, I began to speak to the voices, at first only to silence them, to argue against their accusations. Later, to ask questions, to learn what they had valued in their brief lives. Why did you not flee? I asked the memory of a human priestess who had stood with arms outstretched before her temple. Some things are worth more than survival, her voice whispered from the darkness of my mind. What things? I demanded. Faith, the knowledge that you stood for something greater than yourself. I pondered her words for a decade. We comprehend vengeance and pride, but standing for something beyond oneself, this was foreign thinking. As my body continued to deteriorate, my mind expanded in strange ways. I began to dream even while awake, living not just deaths but lives. I experienced the joy of human weddings, the wonder of elven forests, the steadfast community of dwarven halls. Through 1,000 different eyes, I watched sunrises I had taken for granted. Through countless hearts, I felt loves I had extinguished. Is this understanding? I roared to the empty chambers of my lair. No answer came, except the constant chorus of the dead. 1,500 years into my sentence, something changed. A new voice joined the multitude. But this one did not belong to any of my victims. It spoke from outside my mountain, calling my name with the precise intonation required to reach a dragon's mind. Vraxion the Crimson, are you within? I seek audience. At first, I thought it another trick of the curse, but the voice persisted, patient and powerful. A spellcaster, certainly, but not one bent on vengeance. Curious despite my suffering, I cleared one of the collapsed tunnels and beheld my visitor. A human woman stood before me, her robes the deep blue of twilight, her hair white though her face was young. She showed no fear as I emerged, my once massive form now gaunt and hunched, more a sketch of a dragon than the terror I had been. You have found Vraxion, I said, my voice a rasp from centuries of disuse. What do you seek? Spellweaver. I have no treasures to give, no wisdom to share, no strength to lend. She bowed, a gesture of respect rather than subservience. I am Lysandra, archivist of the Cobalt Soul. I seek only knowledge. The records speak of a great red dragon who vanished from the world at the height of his power. Some say you were destroyed, others claim you ascended to godhood. I wish to learn the truth. I laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. The truth? I was cursed by a dying archmage to experience the deaths of all I killed. For 15 centuries I have been dying, over and over, feeling every burn, every crushed bone, or satisfaction on her face. Instead, she looked at me with something far worse. Pity. May I record your story? She asked, producing a journal and quill from her robes. For the archives? Why? As a warning to others of my kind, as entertainment for your scholars, as testimony, she said quietly. All experiences have value, even those born of suffering, especially those, perhaps. I should have refused, should have retreated into my lair and sealed it again. But 1,500 years of isolation had left me starved for conversation with any mind other than the ghosts haunting my own. I told her everything, the curse, the dreams, the slow erosion of what I had once been. She wrote without pause, her quill scratching across parchment as I spoke of atrocities and agonies alike. When I finished, night had fallen outside my mountain. You said the Archmage cursed you to feel every death until you understood, Lysandra said, looking up from her completed manuscript. What do you, I think she wanted you to understand? The question haunted me long after the archivist departed. What understanding could possibly justify eternal suffering? What lesson was worth this price? Another 500 years passed. My physical form continued its decline. Scales fell away in patches, revealing skin that no longer healed properly. My wings became useless membranes stretched over brittle bones. My flame, once hot enough to melt stone, now barely warmed the air before me. Yet, as my body failed, my mind expanded in ways I could never have imagined. The curse had forced open doors that could not be closed again. I began to see patterns in the lives I had ended, common threads of hope and fear, love and ambition. The intricate web of connections between beings I had considered insignificant. One night, 2,000 years into my sentence, I dreamed I was a dragon, not myself, but a younger red dragon facing down a party of adventurers. I felt his arrogance, his certainty that these tiny creatures posed no threat. I experienced his shock as their coordinated attacks brought him low. His disbelief as a sword pierced his heart. I woke, trembling. The curse had never shown me dragon deaths before. What did it mean? The answer came from an unexpected source. A voice I had heard countless times among my victims, the village blacksmith who had tried to shield her apprentice with her own body. Everyone dies, her voice whispered in my mind. Even dragons, even gods. What matters is what you leave behind. I left nothing but destruction. I replied to the darkness, ash and bone and hatred. Then leave something else with whatever time remains to you. Leave something else. The thought was so foreign to my dragon nature that I initially rejected it. Dragons take. We hoard. We destroy. We do not create or give. Yet the seed of the idea would not die. 2 centuries later, I forced my decaying body from my lair once more. This time, I did not seek counsel or knowledge. I sought a place my flames had once reduced to cinders, a prosperous town built around a natural harbor. The journey nearly killed me. My wings failed completely halfway there, forcing me to crawl the remaining distance. By the time I reached the outskirts of what was now a small city, I was little more than a skeleton draped in tattered red flesh. The panic my appearance caused was predictable. Guards rushed to defend the walls. Spellcasters prepared destructive magic. Civilians fled into reinforced shelters. I made no threatening moves. Instead, I lowered my head to the ground in a posture no dragon would willingly adopt before lesser beings. "I am Vraxian," I called out, my voice barely carrying to the walls. "Once, I burned this place to ash. Today, I come seeking atonement." The word felt strange in my mouth, a concept so human it seemed to scorch my tongue more than any flame. For 3 days, I remained outside the city, motionless, as officials debated my fate. Some argued for attempting to destroy me, weak as I clearly was. Others suggested accepting whatever restitution a dragon might offer. A few claimed I was an illusion or a trick, not believing the scourge of the crimson sky would ever humble himself before mortals. On the 4th day, a delegation approached, led by the city's mayor. It included representatives from families whose ancestors I had killed centuries ago. They carried no weapons but wore expressions harder than dwarven steel. "Why have you come, destroyer?" the mayor asked. A grey-haired woman with eyes that reminded me of the archmage who had cursed me. "I have lived every death I caused," I told them. "Felt every burn, every crushed bone, every last breath. I cannot undo what I did, but I can offer what remains of me as recompense." "And what remains of you?" asked an elderly man whose family name I recognized from my dreams. "What could you possibly give that would balance our losses?" In answer, I opened my mouth and produced not flame but a single perfect ruby, coughed up from the deepest part of my hoard. Large as a human head, it glowed with an inner fire that had nothing to do with my draconic nature. "My heartstone," I said as they stared at the gem. "The source of a dragon's power and life. With it, you could build defenses no army could breach, heal wounds no magic could touch, ensure prosperity for 1,000 generations. A dragon surrendering their heartstone was unheard of. It would not kill me, not directly, but it would accelerate my decline and prevent any recovery. It was, in effect, a slow suicide. The delegation conferred among themselves, then returned to the city. For 2 more days I waited, growing weaker without my heartstone nearby. Finally they returned. "We accept your offering," the mayor said, "not as payment for lives that cannot be valued, but as a beginning. There is more you must do. More. I was dying already, my body failing, my power a mere spark of what it once had been. What more could they possibly want?" "Tell us their stories," said a young woman who had been silent until now. "You say you lived their deaths, then you know how they lived. Tell us of our ancestors. Give us back the memories your flames tried to erase." And so began the final chapter of my existence. For 20 years I remained outside that city, a withering monument to destruction and rebirth. Families came to me daily, asking about relatives centuries dead. Drawing on the curse that had become my only gift, I told them everything. I spoke of the fisherman who sang to the sea each morning, the twins who could communicate without words, the healer who worked until her hands bled during a fever outbreak, the guardsman who recited poetry to himself during night watches. With each story, the pain of that particular death eased within me, not vanishing, but transforming into something bearable. The voices did not fall silent, but they ceased their accusatory howling, becoming instead a chorus of witnesses to my transformation. The city built a new harbor wall with the power of my heartstone. Ships sailed from their port to distant lands, carrying tales of the repentant dragon. Some called me Vraxion the Redeemed, others Vraxion the Storyteller. Children no longer feared my name but came to sit before me and hear about courage in the face of terror. I am dying now, truly dying. Without my heartstone, my physical form cannot sustain itself much longer. My scales have all fallen away, leaving only raw flesh that steams in the rain. My eyes, once sharp enough to spot a fleeing rabbit from 1,000 feet above, can barely discern shapes. My voice, once capable of shattering stone with its power, is a whisper. Yet I am more alive than I ever was in my centuries of terrorizing the realms. I understand now what the Archmage intended with her curse. Not just suffering, but transformation. Not just pain, but purpose. Dragons do not have an afterlife, not as mortals conceive it. Our essence returns to the elemental chaos from which the first dragons emerged. I do not fear this dissolution. Indeed, I welcome it. To become one with the foundations of creation seems fitting after so long apart from it. But sometimes, in moments between sleeping and waking, I wonder, all those souls I consumed, all those lives I ended, all those stories I absorbed through the curse, where did they go? Do they wait for me somewhere beyond the veil of existence? Not for vengeance now, but for recognition, to be fully seen and acknowledged by the being that tried to erase them. I think perhaps they do. And I think perhaps, when my time finally ends, I will face them not as victims, but as teachers. They taught me what the Archmage meant. They showed me that understanding requires more than knowledge. It demands transformation. I am not the dragon I was. The creature who delighted in terror and hoarded pain like treasure exists only in fading memory. I have become something impossible. A dragon reshaped by regret. Vraxion the witness. Vraxion the changed. The city has built a structure around me, open to the sky but sheltered from harsh weather. They call it the Dragon's Vigil. When I am gone, they will preserve my bones as a reminder that even the most destructive force can be redirected toward healing. Even the cruelest being can learn compassion. Even a creature of flame and hate can, in the end, understand. My fire is nearly extinguished now, but in my final days, I have discovered a different kind of burning, the warmth of connection, the steady flame of remembrance, the smoldering coal of atonement that, against all expectation, contains more heat than hatred ever could. I am Vraxion, last of the Crimson Brood, and I have learned that true power lies not in what you can destroy, but in what you can transform, even if that something is yourself. Listen well to my story. Listen well to my story, one in the scram. Remember not just the terror I caused, but the change that came after. Look upon my fate not with satisfaction at justified suffering, but with recognition that pain without purpose is merely torture, while pain with meaning can reshape even a dragon's heart. The voices have grown quiet now, not silent, never that, but they speak differently, a murmuration rather than a scream. Sometimes I think I hear the bard among them, the one who sang as I descended upon her village. Her song has changed too. Creature of memory and change, she sings in my fading mind. How rich your surrender, how full your gift. The sun sets on my final day. My breath comes shallow and slow. The gathered townsfolk maintain their vigil, witnesses to a death unlike any dragon has chosen before. I close my eyes, feeling the curse lift at last. The Archmage's voice, almost forgotten after all these centuries, whispers through my consciousness. Feel every death you caused until you understand. I understand now, I reply to her memory. I understand at last. As darkness claims me, I hear not screams but singing, a chorus of thousands, welcoming me not as monster but as kin. Their forgiveness burns brighter than my flames ever could. I am Vraxion, and I am finally free.